What is a false stereotype about attractive people? That they are shallow and horrible. Ended up dating a really stunning-looking woman, and she turned out to be one of the nicest persons I had ever met, really kind, caring, and funny. We split up years ago, but I still think of her fondly and hope she found a good man to share her life with. Genuinely can't think of a single bad thing to say about her.
It's interesting how first impressions can be misleading. I knew someone who was thought to be shallow, but when I got to know her, she was genuinely nice. We dated for a bit, and even after we broke up, I still appreciate the time we shared. It's nice to reflect on the good moments, and hope she's happy wherever she is now. People can surprise you in unexpected ways.
That they were always attractive. I was a very ugly duckling my whole life until I hit my 20s. Then, all of a sudden I'm being told I never knew what it was like to not fit in, or I've never struggled with self-image issues. Truthfully, I just fully matured and grew up in my 20s. I went through so much bullying and self-image issues my entire life.
It's funny how perceptions change. One moment, I felt like I was invisible, battling through the awkward years. Then, as I hit my 20s, it was like a light switched on. Friends told me I never experienced what they did, but they didn't see the struggle. It's weird to get compliments after years of feeling like an outsider. Maturity can really change things up, I guess.
I guess one false stereotype about attractive people is that they are shallow. Some think they focus on their looks too much, which might be true in a few cases, but not all. It's actually the people around them who usually notice their looks first, since they naturally draw the eye. Attractive people have different personalities and characters, just like the rest of us average-looking folks.
I get what you're saying. It's easy to make assumptions based on looks. I remember a friend who was really attractive but was also super kind and funny. People often overlook that because they were too busy focusing on their appearance. It's interesting how first impressions can cloud our judgment about someone's personality. In the end, everyone has their own story, regardless of how they appear.
That they're unapproachable or not nice. That can be wildly off. I'm fortunate enough that in my life, I have only ever encountered a very small number of assholes, and none of them were ever a physically attractive person. The opposite for the most part, actually. Whereas the most attractive people that I have known in my life have been amongst the nicest and easiest to get along with. It's a bad stereotype. I think repeated as a means to help unattractive people feel that they are taking them down a peg. And if they're shy or bashful, they don't get the benefit of the doubt. Instead, it is unfairly chalked up to being cocky, conceited, or aloof.
I get what you mean. It's weird how people jump to conclusions based on looks. I had a friend who was super attractive but really down to earth. Everyone assumed she'd be stuck up, but she was just shy. It kind of made me realize that those stereotypes don't really hold up. The nicer people are often the ones you least expect. It's all about getting to know someone before judging.
That they are constantly being approached by people for dates. Some of the most attractive people I know get approached less than my average friends because everyone assumes they are out of their league. People get intimidated by attractive folks, but really they aren't normally much more confident or sure of themselves than your average person.
I have a friend who's really good looking, but you wouldn't guess it by how many people actually ask them out. It's weird how people tend to think they're untouchable or out of reach. Meanwhile, my friend is just as nervous about dating as anyone else. It's like there's this weird barrier that shouldn't even be there. People just overthink it, making it harder for themselves.
But they look that attractive all the time. BC, different circumstances highlight different levels of attractiveness. Like someone who looks hot out at a party or formal event might comparatively look like shit at the gym. BC, they're not particularly built muscle-wise. And not saying everyone's definition of attractiveness is the same, obviously, but there's certain environments that'll heighten some people's appearance while not doing much for others.
Yeah, I get that. It's interesting how setting plays a big role in how people are perceived. Like, I've seen friends who look incredible at parties, but then at the gym, it's a whole different vibe. It shows how context can really change things, making some people stand out more than others. Everyone has their moments, I guess. It's just part of how we see each other in different spaces.
That they always look like that and have no concept of being ugly. I'm a reasonably good-looking adult. I was not a good-looking teenager, nor was I cute for most of my childhood. As a baby, of course I was, but who isn't? And honestly, my young adulthood, say 17 to 24, appearance was okay. My mid-20s on, I hear all kinds of blah blah about how it's not possible I was bullied for my looks. I was, and it wasn't jealousy. It's not possible that I wasn't popular with boys in high school, etc. Since I wasn't particularly attractive in the meat market years, a lot of the pretty privileged stuff never applied to me. It's useful to be good looking now, as a whole adult of course, but it's not something I've experienced my whole life. People also really underestimate how much money impacts whether people view you as attractive. It's not just zillions to spend on secret beauty procedures. A ton of beauty standards are literally reflections of whether someone has disposable income.
It's interesting how perceptions of attractiveness change over time. I had a friend who was always considered cute in high school, but they struggled with self-esteem. In their mid-20s, they started taking care of themselves, got a good job, and suddenly everyone saw them differently. It's true that money can change how people are viewed. Often, it's about confidence and circumstance more than just looks. Life can be pretty ironic.
That they've had it easy their whole life. I've only recently become conventionally attractive, and people are so much meaner and dismissive compared to when I wasn't. It's almost like they chalk it up in their head that you've always had it easy, always been attractive, and they like to be ones to bring you down a few pegs.
I can relate to that. I had a friend who went through a big transformation, and suddenly people treated him differently. It's strange how quickly they judge you based on looks, thinking you don't face any challenges. It shows how superficial some people's perceptions can be. Just because someone seems to have it all, doesn't mean they don't deal with their own stuff. People can be pretty harsh sometimes.
Not to sound conceited, but I'm actually a relatively handsome guy, or so people have told me. But I'm socially awkward as hell, and I'm literally a homebody who struggles with social anxiety. So people pretty much assume I'm just full of myself, or they think I'm under the impression that I'm too good to talk to other people. Like now I'm just a normal person who is lucky enough to have a nice face. I'm still a socially awkward dork though.
I get the feeling. People often judge based on looks without knowing the real person. It's tough to be in that position where your appearance leads to assumptions. Being a homebody and dealing with social anxiety can make things even harder. You want to connect but can't find the right way to do it. It's just a reminder that everyone has their own struggles, no matter how they look.
I am fairly attractive. That's what PPL are telling me. But I was that ugly kid that got bullied in school, and I'm still stuck with this mindset. It doesn't help that I'm a perfectionist as well. I'm extremely insecure and have little love for myself. Whenever I look in the mirror, I still see traces of that kid, and I can't help but hate it.
I get that feeling. Sometimes it's hard to shake off those old memories. People see the outer changes, but inside, it's like you're still that same person. It takes time to adjust your mindset. I think many of us have that struggle, no matter how much we improve on the outside. Learning to appreciate yourself is a journey. You're not alone in this.
Not that I feel I am more attractive by any measure, but I was at worst mental health when I was at my best physical health. Every gym struggled to get to the next level, counting calories and going to the gym / working out 4 times a week on top of work, and 2 kids made me the worst version of me. I probably overdid it, but the pressure I put on myself was horrendous. People thought he looks a lot healthier than ever before, but I felt worse.
It's interesting how we often think that looking good means feeling good. I had a friend who was in great shape but always stressed about his diet and workouts. He seemed fine on the outside but was really struggling mentally. It taught me that sometimes we focus too much on appearances, thinking that they reflect our inner health, but it's not always the case. The pressure can really mess with your head.
That they're aware of it. When I was younger, I had no idea I was until people pointed it out. I have always had depression, so I don't think that ever sunk in. I don't think I am anymore, but looking at photos, I definitely was at one point, and I didn't know. People are intimidated by good-looking people, but good-looking people can't see themselves and are just people. If you find a kind and sweet person who happens to be good-looking, see it as a wonderful bonus. But really you were lucky to find that guy or girl with a fantastic smile and good heart. Treat them kindly and never assume they're arrogant or anything like that. Maybe they're confident because they love life and like you.
It's interesting how we don't see ourselves the way others do. I remember a friend who always thought they looked uninteresting, but others saw them as attractive. They struggled with self-image while being a genuinely nice person. It's true, good looks often create misunderstandings. It's important to remember that kindness and personality matter more than appearance. When you find someone who embodies both, it's definitely worth appreciating.
They don't make very good leaders. Was enlisted in the Army for 3 years, and either dude or chick, mainly chick in this instance, didn't make a very good or effective leader. They couldn't make a decision or a plan of action on their own. Always needed confirmation or sought out the approval of the chain of command. Had this curvy sergeant, a sergeant, who couldn't make a decision on her own. She constantly sought out the confirmation of the captain or lieutenant on any course of action she had to make. Basically took 2 extra steps on a plan of action that needed none.
It's tough when you're under someone who can't lead effectively. I remember a friend in a similar situation. He had a boss who wouldn't decide anything without triple-checking with higher-ups. It slowed everyone down. You could see the frustration in the crew. Sometimes you just need someone to take charge without needing constant validation. It creates more work for everyone and takes away from the mission.
Being hot can almost feel like being ugly. When you're attractive and have those times where you feel unsure about your appearance and self-esteem, it really nags your brain. People won't approach you or compliment you because they think you're unapproachable or you get tons of compliments a day. I had some blunder teenage years, and I can tell you when I have a bad day, it hurts the same as back in the days.
It's weird how confidence and looks play into how you feel about yourself. I remember having days where I'd get compliments, but it didn't change that nagging feeling inside. Those awkward teenage years really stick with you. Even now, a bad day can bring back those old insecurities, making you feel like you're back in high school all over again. It's just part of being human, I guess.
That we have good relationships. If anything, being attractive just makes people want to fuck you more. Maybe they often think you are too attractive to be with just one person, so as a man, and a short one at that, I'm a hopeless romantic, but I can get sex. It's like a double something I forgot what it's called, LOL. Tons of women have told me I'm handsome, though it has never played a role in my success with them.
It's interesting how looks can create perceptions. People sometimes assume that being attractive means having it easy in relationships. I get that. Looks can lead to attention, but they don't always translate to deeper connections. I've seen friends struggle despite being good-looking. It really shows that the vibe and personality matter more in the end. Being a hopeless romantic can make things tricky, but it's good to appreciate genuine connections.
That they're into other attractive people. Every time you see someone super hot with a less good-looking person, everyone is jumping to say how they don't fit. Just because someone has good looks doesn't mean they want to have a relationship with someone who looks like them. They have preferences just like everyone else.
Yeah, I get that. People always judge a couple based on looks. I remember a friend dating someone who wasn't conventionally attractive. Everyone was confused, asking why. But honestly, they just clicked. Sometimes it's about personality or other things that connect people. Looks aren't everything. It's good to see love that defies that stereotype.
I often switch from being ultra fit to normal body almost yearly. When I'm at my fittest, I do get quite a lot of stares, and I'm very conscious of it. It makes me try to not stand out, and I get very shy in public. In the wintertime, I feel much more relaxed BC. I know people aren't starting as much, and I'm much more comfortable in public. And I consider myself a very confident guy, but I'm still like this. I couldn't imagine how difficult it is for a young teen.
It's interesting how our perception of ourselves changes based on our physical state. I can relate to feeling self-conscious when I'm at my fittest. The stares can be a lot sometimes. Winter does help though. It's like a shield that makes you feel less exposed. Confidence is tricky, even when you think you're doing well. I guess being aware of how young teens feel adds another layer to this whole thing.
I dated a guy who was drop-dead gorgeous, and women were constantly starting at him. But nobody ever approached him because he came across as standoffish, and they figured he either one had a girlfriend or two. Though he was snobbish about looks, I'd spent some time talking to him at some event, and upon realizing that he was actually unattached and he had a lot of common interests, asked him out, and he accepted. We talked about his dating history once, and he mentioned he'd been the ugly duckling as a teenager. He showed me pictures. I don't think he was as bad as he made himself out to be, so he still saw that in the mirror, and as a result, was still quite shy around women, which was where this standoffish perception came from.
It's interesting how appearances can be misleading. I once knew someone who fit that vibe too. People often assumed he was unapproachable because he had that serious look. He was actually pretty chill once you got to know him. Turns out, he had a lot of insecurities from his past. It's wild how our experiences can shape how we present ourselves, even if it's not how we really feel inside.
In my psychology class, the prof, in making a point, asked how many people in the room had a date for the weekend. There was approximately 12 to 13 attractive women in the room. One raised her hand. I assume attractive people are popular and dating all the time, but this said it all. My roommate was a beautiful blonde, and mostly creepy guys hit on her, not the type she was interested in.
It's interesting how perceptions can be misleading. I thought being attractive would make dating easier too. But sometimes, it seems like it complicates things even more. I had a friend who went through something similar. She was stunning but often found herself fending off unwanted attention. It made me realize that looks aren't everything when it comes to genuine connection. It's more about compatibility and finding the right person who respects you.
I grew up believing the most attractive women were also the meanest. Blaming girl culture at school. I have since met several really beautiful women who were just as beautiful inside. The first few times it took me ages to believe they were genuine. I don't know if that's a stereotype others have as well, or if it was just me, but it's definitely a false one.
It's interesting how those early beliefs shape our views. In school, we often see those stereotypes play out. I had similar thoughts about appearances. It took some time to realize that confidence and kindness can go hand in hand. Meeting people who defy those stereotypes shifts your perspective. It's a good reminder that beauty isn't just about looks, it's about the way someone treats others.
That we don't have to do anything to be attractive. Yes, my genetics helps me a lot, but regardless of how beautiful I am, no one will respect me if I don't maintain it. Taking care of myself, looking clean, wearing flattering clothing, actually cleaning myself, brushing my teeth, doing my hair, it all contributes to people treating me a bit better. I used to suffer from depression and wouldn't put effort to look good, even though I knew I was attractive.
It's interesting how our perception can shift based on our effort. I had a friend who also went through a tough time and stopped caring about their appearance. Once they started putting in a little effort, not just for others but for themselves, they noticed a change in how people treated them. It's surprising how something as simple as self-care can affect both self-esteem and interactions with others.
That they know they are attractive. Many don't. Sometimes it's because they haven't gotten complimented enough for whatever reasons. But sometimes their self-esteem doesn't allow compliments or anything positive to land and reinforce within themselves they are an attractive person. They can have low self-esteem too.
It's interesting how some people don't see what others do. A friend of mine is really good looking but never seems to think so. I remember telling them they looked nice, but it didn't seem to register. It's like they just brush off compliments like it's nothing. It makes you realize that confidence really isn't just about looks, it's more about how you feel inside.
I only accepted that I was attractive when I got older. People treat you different, holding you to higher standards, and it can make you feel like you're doing something wrong. There were a dozen pretty girls that looked at me, and I just did not pick up on it. There was also an extremely toxic but very pretty girl I grew up with that always tried breaking me down, and would call me on the phone making sex noises and saying I'll never get laid LOL. Marry my high school crush, so whatever. I think a lot just don't think of themselves that way, and can lead to severe self-esteem issues. And fellas, if she's trying to be a bully, she's into you.
It's interesting how perception changes over time. I also struggled with self-image when I was younger. There were moments where I didn't realize people found me attractive. A friend of mine dealt with a similar toxic dynamic, where someone would tiptoe between teasing and flirting. It's funny how those experiences can shape you, but in the end, finding someone who appreciates you makes it all worth it.
I used to work with a girl, tall, statuesque, gorgeous, like 6 feet, graceful, long black flowing hair, and this just hypnotic, mysterious beauty. She'd come around, meet with different employees, was friendly, but just really cold and standoffish to me. She doesn't owe me anything, and that's totally fine, but it made me wonder, does she hate me? And hoped I'd not done anything to make her not like me. Anyway, I noticed she was this way with a lot of people. I kind of thought maybe, because of her look, she was entitled to not be nice to people. Long story short, much later we became really good friends, and it dawned on me that she absolutely lacked confidence about her looks. She was part Japanese, part European, and it added to a bit of this insecurity of identity as well. She grew up super tall and hated how it made her stand out. She saw herself as awkward and weird and not pretty and just so deeply insecure that she wouldn't let herself be in a position to be embarrassed ever. It was just hilarious that this was the actual reason she was the way she was. You just never know.
It's interesting how we can misread people. I had a friend in school who seemed unapproachable but turned out to be very shy. Like your story, she had her own insecurities that made her distant at first. Once we got to know her, she opened up, and we realized she just didn't know how to connect. It's a reminder that appearances don't always tell the whole story. Everyone has their battles.
I've been on a few dates with a woman now, and to me, and I think just about anyone would agree if they saw her, she's absolutely gorgeous. Like, I think I'm attractive, and I still find myself thinking, is she actually into me? Fit, beautiful warm brown eyes, killer smile, glowing skin, great ass, it has to be said. And yet she's told me a couple times now, she's actually not overall an extremely confident person, and is actually kind of shy/awkward, but just good at hiding it. So yeah, this definitely seems to be true.
It's funny how attraction works. You see someone who's beautiful and think they have it all figured out. But then you find out they're just like you, dealing with insecurity. It makes it more relatable, I guess. It's good to know that what we see on the surface doesn't always match what's underneath. Makes you wonder if they think the same about you too, feeling like maybe you're not good enough.
I think most social situations are just easier for them. I think that has a large impact on daily stressful interactions. I have a close friend who models. Absolutely gorgeous, and she rarely struggles to find acceptance with anyone. People seek her acceptance and attention, so she finds it very easy to navigate most social situations. She struggles to deal with mildly complex relationship situations because she is used to anyone just throwing their attention her way. She's a great person, but very unaware of how much her beauty affects her life.
It's interesting how looks can shape social dynamics. My friend definitely has it easier in some ways. Everyone wants to be around her, but that doesn't mean she doesn't face her own issues. It's tough for her to understand when relationships get complicated since she's used to straightforward interactions. It just shows that beauty can come with its own set of challenges, not just perks.
I've 28M, been told since 21 that I'm very attractive. I suppose that's when puberty finished its magic. I've been on 2 dates, and Eve ain't never been in an actual "this is my boyfriend" relationship. 9 out of 10 guys just want to hook up and keep it casual, which is fine when they're upfront about it. The other 1 out of 10 are guys who have extremely low self-esteem and clearly just hope we'll give them a shot for a self-esteem boost. I would love nothing more for a guy to ask me on a museum date and talk about our favorite works. Anyways, back to this master's degree to focus my spare time on.
It's interesting how looks can influence dating. Seems like people often have their own agendas. Casual hookups can be okay if everyone's clear, but it can get exhausting. A museum date sounds like a refreshing change, though. It's nice to connect over interests instead of just the superficial stuff. Good call on the master's degree. Channeling that energy into something productive can make all the difference.
I wouldn't say I'm super attractive or anything, but I definitely got better looking as I aged. In high school, I had really bad acne, had crooked teeth, I was tall and lanky, and just generally not good looking. Being poor and not being able to afford good clothes didn't help either. My acne cleared up, I put on some muscle, straightened out my posture, got braces, bought nice clothes, and all of a sudden I could pass as being semi-good looking. I'm in my 40s now, and I still carry a lot of those insecurities with me though.
It's funny how looks change over time. I had a similar journey. In school, I was awkward and didn't really care about my appearance. Then, as I got older, things started to click into place. I focused on fitness and style, and the difference was noticeable. But like you, I still hold on to those old insecurities. It's just part of the experience, I guess.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.